Welcome to Byte-Sized Tech, where we like to blend casual conversations with some, insightful discussions
Yeah,
on all the latest in technology and gadgets.
absolutely.
And today, we're going to be doing a deep dive into some stories that really highlight how tricky it can be to balance innovation
Yeah,
with, well, everything else.
right.
Security, international regulations,
Yeah.
you name it.
It's like walking a tightrope, isn't it?
Yeah.
You've got these amazing technological advancements that are happening at just breakneck speed,
Yeah.
but at the same time, you have to be so mindful of the potential risks and make sure that you're not tripping over any legal or ethical boundaries.
Yeah, and we've got a prime example of that playing out right now in the open source world.
Totally.
Remember the Linux kernel? The foundation of countless operating systems?
No, yeah.
Things are getting a little, shall we say, dramatic over there.
Yeah, there's been a bit of a shakeup in the Linux community, and it all kind of stems from this removal of several key maintainers. Now, for those who aren't familiar, maintainers are essentially the guardians of specific sections of the Linux kernel code. They review contributions, they make sure everything integrates smoothly, and they're absolutely crucial to keeping the whole project running.
So these are the folks that are like the unsung heroes.
Yeah.
The ones that keep the engine of the internet running smoothly.
Precisely.
Okay.
But what's interesting here is that the maintainers who were removed all had something in common.
Okay.
Ties to Russia.
Interesting.
And that's where things get really interesting.
Okay.
Because it all circles back to those OFAC sanctions, the ones that are issued by the U.S. Treasury Department's Office of Foreign Assets Control.
Okay, so for those of us who aren't fluent in, international finance jargon, what exactly is OFAC and why does it matter in the world of open source software?
Well, in a nutshell, OFAC enforces economic and trade sanctions against targeted countries, individuals, or entities. And being on their list can seriously limit your ability to engage in international collaborations.
Oh, wow.
Including contributing to open source projects.
So we've got this collision between the open and collaborative nature of open source development and the complexities of international sanctions.
Totally.
It's like trying to build a global village when some of the villagers aren't allowed to leave their houses.
It's definitely created a lot of uncertainty and debate within the Linux community.
Yeah. Okay.
On the one hand, you have the principle of inclusivity. That's always been central to open source.
Yeah.
This idea that anyone, regardless of their background, should be able to contribute.
Right. That makes sense.
But on the other hand, you have the legal and compliance risks that organizations like the Linux Foundation have to consider.
Oh, absolutely.
It's a tough balancing act, and there's really no easy solution.
And to make matters even more complicated,
Yeah.
the details surrounding the maintainer's removal have been a bit murky.
Right.
There's been talk about potential security concerns and national interests being factored into the decision. But it's all very hush-hush.
Yeah, it's definitely a situation worth watching closely.
So we're left with more questions than answers.
Right.
Was it purely a legal decision based on OFAC compliance? Or were there other factors at play?
Yeah.
And what does this mean for the future of open source projects that rely on global collaboration?
It really highlights the challenges of navigating international regulations in an increasingly interconnected world.
Well, the Linux community is wrestling with restrictions. It's interesting to see how another tech giant, Apple, is taking a very different approach when it comes to encouraging collaboration.
Yes.
Especially in their quest for, wait for it, private AI.
You're talking about their private cloud compute initiative, right?
Yes.
The one where they're going to these extraordinary lengths to ensure that your personal data stays private, even from Apple itself.
It's like they're building Fort Knox for your iPhone data.
It's a bold move in a world where data privacy feels like a distant memory.
But here's where it gets really exciting. At least for anyone with a knack for finding security flaws. They've launched a new bug bounty program that is making headlines.
Oh, yes, the bug bounty program.
Yes.
It's quite a statement. They're offering some serious cash to anyone who can uncover vulnerabilities in their private cloud compute systems.
Okay.
We're talking up to $1 million for a single critical bug.
$1 million?
Yeah.
You're telling me I could stumble upon a security flaw and suddenly be able to afford a down payment on a house?
Right.
Sign me up.
It's definitely a clever way to incentivize security researchers and ethical hackers to help them identify and patch vulnerabilities before they can be exploited.
Yeah.
It's like crowdsourcing security, but with a potentially life-changing payout.
So what kind of bugs are we talking about here?
Well, there's a tiered system based on the severity of the vulnerability.
Okay.
If you accidentally stumble across a way to disclose private information,
Yeah.
you could still walk away with a cool 50 grand.
Oh, wow.
But for that top prize,
Yeah.
you would need to uncover something like a full-blown code execution exploit.
Okay, time for a quick ELI5 moment.
Okay.
What exactly is a code execution exploit?
All right, so imagine someone finding a secret backdoor in the system that allows them to inject and execute their own malicious code.
Oh, wow.
That's a code execution exploit.
So scary.
And it can have some pretty disastrous consequences.
Yeah.
Like giving someone the keys to the kingdom,
Right.
and in this case, the kingdom is your personal data.
So Apple's basically saying, hey, we know we can't do this alone.
Yeah.
We need all the help we can get to make sure our private AI system is as secure as possible.
Exactly.
Okay.
And to show that they're serious about collaboration, they're even open sourcing some of the code that's used by PCC.
Wow.
And providing virtual research environments for security researchers to test their skills.
It's amazing.
It's a refreshing approach that recognizes the value of community involvement in security.
It's like they're saying, hey, let's all work together to make sure this technology is
Yeah.
as secure and beneficial as possible.
Right.
It's a stark contrast to the Linux situation,
It is.
where collaboration is facing some serious roadblocks.
Indeed. But speaking of security, let's not forget that even with the best intentions and bug bounty programs, things can still go wrong.
Oh, yeah.
And unfortunately, that's what happened with Fortinet
Oh, no.
and a rather nasty vulnerability that they've been dealing with.
Okay.
It's a reminder that no system is foolproof.
Right.
And the bad guys are always looking for an opening.
Okay, I'm intrigued. What's the story with Fortinet?
It's called the 40-jump vulnerability.
Oh, wow.
A rather catchy name for a serious security flaw.
Okay.
It's a 0-day vulnerability.
Which means it was unknown to the developers until it was discovered being actively exploited in the wild.
So hackers were already using this flaw to their advantage before anyone even knew about it.
That's right.
That's unsettling. How long was this going on?
It had been active since at least June,
Wow.
according to Mandiant, the cybersecurity firm that uncovered the vulnerability.
Okay.
And what's even more concerning is that it affected a significant number of Fortinet's products,
Right.
leaving over 50 servers vulnerable to attacks.
50 servers.
Yeah.
That sounds like a pretty big deal.
It is.
What exactly were the hackers doing? Was it just snooping around?
Well, there were signs of data exfiltration,
Okay.
which basically means that hackers were siphoning off sensitive information from those compromised servers. But thankfully, there's no evidence yet that this stolen data has been publicly released or used to target other systems.
So it could have been a lot worse.
Right.
But it's still a wake-up call, wouldn't you say?
It just goes to show that cybersecurity is a constant battle, and vigilance is key.
It underscores the importance of responsible disclosure, which is what Mandiant did in this case. They alerted Fortinet to the vulnerability so they could develop a patch and mitigate the damage.
So we've got drama in the open source world,
Yeah.
big bucks for bug hunters, and a security scare that reminds us all to stay vigilant.
It's a lot to unpack,
But it
really highlights the complex landscape that we're navigating in the tech world.
Absolutely.
It does indeed.
We've seen how international regulations, security concerns, and the very nature of collaboration are all intertwined in this digital age.
And as technology continues to evolve at an ever-increasing pace, these issues are only going to become more complex and intertwined.
Precisely.
And that's why it's so important to stay informed, have these conversations, and be mindful of the challenges and opportunities that lie ahead.
Well said. So we've explored the tensions between open collaboration and security, and we've seen how even the biggest tech companies aren't immune to vulnerabilities.
Right.
But what does this all mean for the average person
Yeah.
trying to navigate this ever-changing digital landscape?
That's a great question,
Yeah.
and one we'll explore further after a quick break.
Stay tuned.
It really feels like we're all just trying to stay afloat in this sea of technological change, doesn't it?
It does.
One minute you're celebrating innovation,
right?
the next you're scrambling to patch security holes.
It's like we're on a roller coaster that never stops.
Yeah.
But, speaking of feeling a little overwhelmed,
Yeah.
we got a great question from a listener named Alex.
Okay.
Who asked, with all these vulnerabilities popping up left and right, is it even possible for us regular folks to stay safe online anymore?
That's a question that I think we're all asking ourselves these days, Alex.
Yeah.
And honestly, it's a valid concern.
Yeah.
The threat landscape is constantly evolving.
Yeah. It is.
And it can feel like a losing battle trying to keep up.
So what's the answer? Are we just doomed to become victims of cyber attacks?
No. Okay. Don't worry. It's not all doom and gloom.
Okay, good.
There are absolutely practical steps you can take to improve your online security, even if you're not a tech expert.
Okay.
It's like building a strong immune system for your digital life.
I like that. Up all ears. What are some simple but effective things our listeners can do to boost their digital defenses?
First and foremost, make sure your software is always up to date.
Okay.
I know those update notifications can be annoying.
Oh, they are?
But they often include crucial security patches that fix known vulnerabilities.
Okay.
Think of it like getting your digital vaccines.
So those updates aren't just about getting the latest bells and whistles.
No.
They're actually helping to protect us from those nasty digital viruses.
Exactly. And speaking of protection,
Yeah.
let's talk about passwords.
Okay.
Strong passwords are absolutely essential. And I can't stress this enough.
Okay.
Use a combination of upper and lowercase letters, numbers, and symbols.
Right.
And please, for the love of all that is digital,
yes,
don't use the same password for multiple accounts.
It's funny. We've had this conversation before.
Yeah.
And I still catch myself doing it sometimes.
I know. It's so easy.
It's just so tempting to use something easy to remember.
Yeah.
But then I remember that's like leaving my front door unlocked and putting a sign out front that says, "Welcome, hackers."
It's a recipe for disaster.
Okay.
Another crucial tip is to be super wary of phishing scams. Those are those emails or messages that try to trick you into clicking on suspicious links or opening attachments from unknown senders.
Right.
They can be very convincing.
They are.
So it's important to always double check the sender.
Okay.
And be suspicious of anything that seems too good to be true.
Oh, I hate those.
Yeah.
They always prey on your curiosity or your desire for a good deal. It's like that old saying, if it seems too good to be true, it probably is.
Words to live by in the digital age.
Yes.
And finally, one of the most effective things you can do is enable two-factor authentication whenever possible.
Okay.
It adds an extra layer of security by requiring you to enter a code from your phone or email in addition to your password.
So even if someone manages to steal your password, they still need that second factor to get in.
Yes.
It's like having a digital bouncer guarding your accounts.
Precisely. And it's becoming increasingly common.
Yeah, it is.
So take advantage of it whenever you can.
Okay, these are all great tips, and I think they really highlight that even though the threat landscape can feel overwhelming, we're not completely powerless.
We're not.
We can take steps to protect ourselves.
Absolutely. And it's important to remember that security is an ongoing process, not a one-time fix.
It's not like you set it and forget it.
No. Stay informed, adapt to new threats, and don't be afraid to ask for help if you need it.
It's like staying healthy. You need to keep exercising those digital security muscles to stay ahead of the game.
That's right.
And speaking of staying healthy, I think it's time for us to take a quick break to recharge our own batteries. But don't go anywhere. We'll be right back with more bite-sized tech in a flash. And we're back. It's funny how we were just talking about feeling overwhelmed by all the tech news, and then we dove headfirst into a story about hackers siphoning off data. Talk about a digital reality check.
It's true. Sometimes it feels like we're living in a sci-fi thriller, doesn't it?
Yeah.
But even with all the risks, I still think there's so much to be excited about in the tech world.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
But it's all about finding that balance, right? Embracing innovation while staying aware of the potential downsides. And that brings us back to that story we started with, the one about the Linux kernel maintainers and their sudden removal. It's easy to get caught up in the technical details, but this situation really raises some big questions about the future of open source software in a world that's becoming increasingly complex.
You hit the nail on the head. The whole premise of open source is built on this idea of global collaboration, a sort of digital melting pot where anyone can contribute regardless of their location or background. But as we've seen with the OFAC sanctions and the Linux situation, there are these real-world constraints that can clash with that idealistic vision.
It's like trying to build a house with a global team, but some of your most skilled builders are suddenly told they can't participate because of where they live. It throws a wrench in the whole project, doesn't it?
Exactly. And it raises questions about how open source projects can navigate these increasingly complex legal and geopolitical realities. How do you balance the principles of inclusivity and transparency with the need to comply with international regulations? It's a tough nut to crack.
So what's the solution? Is there a way to reconcile these seemingly conflicting forces?
Well, it's not going to be easy, but I think one important step is to create more robust and transparent processes for addressing compliance issues within open source communities. Instead of these removals happening behind closed doors, there needs to be a more open dialogue about how to handle these situations fairly and consistently.
So more communication, more clear guidelines, and a process for appeals.
Yeah.
Basically bringing those open source principles of transparency and collaboration into the process itself.
Precisely. It's about finding that sweet spot where you can maintain the spirit of open source while also respecting the legal frameworks that govern international interactions. And it's a conversation that needs to involve everyone, developers, legal experts, policymakers, and the open source community as a whole.
It's a complex issue,
Yeah.
the one that's worth tackling head on. After all, open source has become such a vital part of the tech ecosystem, and its future might depend on finding solutions that work for everyone.
I agree. And in a way, it circles back to that theme we've been touching on throughout this episode, the importance of balance. Finding that equilibrium between innovation compliance and the ethical considerations that should underpin all technological advancements.
It's like a three-legged stool. If one leg is wobbly, the whole thing risks toppling over.
What a perfect analogy. We need to make sure all three legs are strong and stable if we want to create a tech landscape that's not only cutting edge, but also responsible, inclusive, and sustainable.
Well said. And on that note, I think it's time for us to wrap up this bite-sized tech adventure. But before we go, I want to leave our listeners with a question to ponder. As technology continues to blur boundaries and reshape our world, where do you see the line between open collaboration and necessary security measures? It's a question we'll continue to grapple with, and we'd love to hear your thoughts.
Absolutely. It's a conversation that deserves our attention and thoughtful consideration.
Thanks for tuning in to Byte-Sized Tech. If you enjoyed the episode, like, comment, share, and subscribe for more fun tech discussions.